Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. Founded in 2013, the EHL has become the college placement leader on the East Coast. Sit back and learn more about the next step in your junior hockey career.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto: we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 113 of the E-Show. On this week's episode, we're down to just three of us, with Lauren out on assignment as we progress our way through the busy month of March. Kicking things off in the weekly rundown, we start by breaking down an entertaining first round of the EHL Playoffs, including a new record set for the longest game in league history. As for the EHLP, we finalize the power rankings for the year and preview this week's first round of postseason play. Further along in the Ecru Fantasy Challenge, we reset our lineups with just 2 weeks of action remaining, and then wrap up the episode by each circling a series to keep an eye on in our What to Watch For segment. What's up, guys? Just like that, 1 week of the playoffs already done. That flew by.
Some really good series and some surprising series that we're going to be talking about here. Huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
But where I want to start is the best text of the entire postseason so far from Colin Casey, the broadcaster of the Wizards, to me.
Hey.
So Colin finalized Wednesday's marathon, which was basically 2 games, right? We're going to get to that. But the best text was, "Hey, Neil, I'm really sorry to do this, but I'm late for my other job. And I didn't put in the shots from the third overtime. Can you plug those in for me?" Yes, no problem. I got you covered. So I thought that was pretty funny because that was, as Anthony tweeted, the longest game in EHL history.
And as all of us as play-by-play people, our hearts go out to you when you're calling extra hockey times extra hockey, and that is like nonstop. And that was a fast-paced game, up and down they went. So
well, it's funny you say that, Neil. I'd actually reached out to him as well. I congratulated him on a great call in that overtime winner, and also just calling that longest game in EHL history. He told me that he was late for his other job, and as someone who also does play-by-play and also used to work with MLB.com, now I work with Bloomberg, having that other job where having a game that lasts 100 minutes, that can make you late. I can relate to that. But he did a job well done.
It's what makes hockey so great, right? Because when it comes to playoffs and overtime, you never know when it's going to happen. In other sports, there's a clock or there's a build-up for a pitch, so you get to that end point. It could happen at any moment. And you're looking at your clock and you're like, hey, I'm late. I'm still late. I'm even more late now. Could they just end this? And there were chances. There were some really good chances. There was a 5-on-3.
We've talked about that for years, right, Neil? That's why playoff overtime in hockey is the best out of any sport, because you just never know. And usually it is kind of a squeaky goal. I wouldn't call it a squeaky goal. I would call that tired legs, blown assignment by the D-man because he was puck watching a little bit. But that's what happens. You get into, how many minutes of hockey was that at that point?
117.
Yeah. So you start getting a little, what's going on over there? Someone leaks behind you. Game over.
And let's talk about that series more inside the weekly rundown.
It's time for the E-Crew's Weekly Rundown.
The E-Show Weekly Rundown is brought to you by the Junior Hockey Podcast, your home for junior hockey news, knowledge, and nonsense. Check them out at tjhpodcast.com.
So if you're Walpole and you win game 1, and then you put in all that effort for game 2, and then you fall behind 2-0 after 20 minutes in game 3, how the hell do you come back and win that series? That, to me, is probably the most impressive part.
Yeah, I would have loved to have heard what Coach Josh Holmstrom said to the boys.
Someone said something.
Yeah.
Someone said something because they scored 5 unanswered after that.
Or is it that time of year where you don't really need to say anything, too? That could be the sentiment, right? A lot of guys know, hey, it's playoff time. Just let's buck up, guys, and let's get in there and let's get it done. Because
if you're on the Wizards side, right, all the momentum in the world is on your end going into the second period.
Yep.
And just for Walpole to come back, is it going to be enough to now go out and overtake the Rangers? I don't know, right? That's the next tall task. But to see the Wizards up 2-0 yesterday, I'm like, and they had more shots in the first period. This series is over. I was convinced I was the one that was going to be right. Obviously, I was wrong, but it was pretty cool to see what took place. And maybe if Walpole does get through this series, then I will give Josh a call and say, Josh, let's go back into the time machine and just you tell me what you said at the end of that first period, because clearly it kept their season alive. Mm-hmm. So that was one series in the East Division. The other series in the East Division, Nathan Miller said basically at one point this season there was a goalie of the year debate, and that debate doesn't exist anymore. That's basically what he said. Because what he's doing right now is on another level. His goals against average is under 1 now.
Yeah. When I called game one the other day, Neil, for that series, I was like, oh, Nathan Miller, had a couple of goals that he gave up at the end of the season. So we finished with a 1.05 goals against, 959 save percentage. That's not that great. All jokes aside, that is video game like. That is fake. Much like we talked about a lot about Colin Bella last week, Nathan Miller is the Colin Bella of the goaltending variety, and the kid's unbelievable. And
it's like he's playing on rookie mode.
Exactly. Yeah. Literally, Anthony. That's a good comparison. He's so smooth. He never freaks out, even when there's guys crashing in the crease, which is that time of year everybody crashes the net and is fighting for real estate. He stays calm no matter what.
Also, Jeff, I think, well, on one hand, you have to give credit to the Seahawks, which I think is even more of a testament to Nathan Miller. The Seahawks seem to get a lot of grade A chances on the Boston Junior Rangers. Like, the Seahawks didn't just fold as, the 5th place team coming in against the number 1 seed. They put up a fight. And despite the game 2 score, a lot of those goals came in the third period where, in that 6-0 loss, they got kind of deflated at the very end. But for most of that series, they really put up a fight, and Miller had to make some really good saves.
No, it is a good point, Anthony. In game 1, Nate Hopkins was very good. He gave up 1 goal. Yeah. And it was kind of an odd goal. There wasn't a lot of traffic in front of him. It was Roebuck from the blue line, kind of straight away, and kind of just skittered past him. And again, that's playoffs, and that was it. That was all the scoring that Breakaway Ice Center was going to offer that day. So,
but it's like it kind of compares to what we were just talking about with Walpole and the Wizards, because to me, it felt like Walpole putting in all that effort towards game 2. How could they come back in game 3? I felt that way about the Seahawks to go out and compete that hard and lose 1-0, which means a bounce or 2, you're in overtime. You may win that game. To see what happened in the third period the following day, I wasn't totally surprised because they had spent all their energy to get to that point. And at that point, the Rangers took over as the better team. But now for the second year in a row, we have Rangers versus Walpole with a ticket to the finals on the line. The difference this season is that the loser does end up in the wild card game, which will come from the other series against, which is the Avalanche and the Wolves. And I don't think it can go unnoticed anymore, the job that Tim Kuhns has done. Yeah. And I know we've talked about this at length on the podcast, but from the start that they had to be now in the North Division Finals, and they have a legitimate chance to win this series. Like they could win this series. Like there's no doubt about that. They to me, it all comes down to what happens in game 1, which is Captain Obvious, right? Like that's really the Captain Obvious statement. But say if the Wolves can come down and win the first game at the Ice Den and take back home ice to Merrill Fay, where they are a really good team.
Prove that, huh?
Like, you're talking about a sweep at that point. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if they will sweep the Avs, but Anthony said this last week about the Express and Wizards, talking about the potential for overtime games. I see it again in this Wolves and Avs series.
Do you? Ooh. That's I mean, like you said, you can't look at the season series anymore, right? Especially with the Wolves, this Wolves team, because it's a very different team now than it was in the beginning of the year. They had a 9-1 loss to the Avalanche a long time ago. One of the games I do look at, one of their more recent games, especially with their newer goaltender, Liam Kilgallen, was at the end of the year, and they beat the Avalanche in a back and forth high scoring affair, winning 5-4. So the Wolves won 2 out of the 6 regular season matchups. They go 2-4. But look at that last game as something that I'm sure Coach Kuhns is going to look at that tape and show the guys and say, hey, let's do more of this. Maybe play a little more D, get a little tighter on the back end. You don't want to be giving up 4 goals. And I wouldn't expect a lot of those high scoring type affairs. I mean, unless you're Anthony's New Jersey 87s, which we'll get to them in a second. Their baseball scores in their first round, but usually playoffs are more tighter scoring games. But it's going to be a heck of a series, Neil.
But the Avs all year long were a team that I thought of that way. Win that defensive battle. You weren't going to score more than 4 against them, and then it took them scoring 6 goals in each game to get by Seacoast this year. Like,
and how about did you guys pick Kyle Dan to have 4 goals in their first round? I think he finished with 2 in the regular season.
And it's funny because Chris did say to me, I can't even make this up, watch out for Kyle Dan in the playoffs.
Really?
And I was like, but that goes back to our coaches seeing something, most likely in practice or in a late season game, that he knew something was coming. And
a good depth piece. And like we talked about that last week too. All 3 of us did about that's what comes when it comes to playoff time, no matter if you're the NHL, college, or juniors, it's those depth pieces, the Kyle Dans that are the glue that helps you win rounds, win cups, win championships.
Especially because like defense is always so important in the playoffs, and usually the game plan is let's cover their top scores, lock them down.
Right.
And ironically enough, they're the ones who don't really get that many scoring chances. And just you said, Jeff, it's the depth pieces that really kind of have to shine.
Yeah.
And Sorella broke apart his little perfection line. It wasn't Tersoni, Carlson, Hotchkiss. I think he had Tersoni, Carlson, and Dan together, if I remember correctly. So interesting to see what he does coming up here. But then you get to the other playoff series in the North. I'm kind of transitioning all over the place because
sounds like my fantasy segment.
Yeah, it definitely does.
You're learning.
But
you're welcome.
We had 2 series in the first round where the higher seed hosted all the games. One was this Lumberjacks Wolves. The other was the Applecore Railers. They each followed a different pattern, though. For the Lumberjacks and Wolves, the Lumberjacks won game 1, lost game 2, traveled home, sat on that for a day, then went back for a day trip to play game 3. And as we know, they obviously lost. You compare it to the Applecore and the Railers. Applecore lose game 1 and then win game 2 and head home with all that momentum. I wasn't surprised for a second when they took the initial lead yesterday. So then how that transitions back to the Lumberjacks, when you go back into game 3 and you fall behind in a tough place to play against a Wolves team that, as the series progressed, it started to shut things down more. I think it's just more credit to the Wolves for losing game 1 and then just saying, you know what, like this is not how our season is going to end. We're going to take back home ice and we're going to win this series right now. That was pretty impressive to me.
I also think it was kind of similar to like we just like you had just mentioned, Neil, and you, Anthony, about with the Seahawks putting out all their effort in game 1. I feel like that's the same case for the Lumberjacks. That's a crush. To lose in overtime is crushing. Your series, your season's on the line in game 3. And like you just said, Murphy, I guess we're finding out that's the number 1 toughest building to play. That's some good home ice up there.
Yeah, it has to be. But I brought up the other series because now we get to go to the series that almost proved that Anthony is a genius. It almost proved that, Anthony, because
you know what? When Applecore went up 3-1, I was thinking, "Oh my goodness, they can actually do this."
Yes.
We all were like,
but credit to the Railers. Yeah, because one thing that you can say about Applecore is that there are times where their power play is absolutely
lethal,
fantastic.
Yes,
and I probably should have mentioned him in the playoff preview, but Spencer Boris scored twice on the power play.
Yep.
He can be low-key deadly on the man advantage, and he was the reason why Applecore had that 3-1 lead.
Yep.
And Charles Lavoie also scored. I talked about him in the preview.
Yep.
So even if Callahan's not the one scoring goals, because remember, he got a lot of his points with assists. Or,
Yep.
I mean, Applecourt took it to the Railers, and I think that they deserve a lot of credit for the kind of fight that they put up and taking it to 3 games.
And I know it's hindsight now, right? Being the next day. But I think where they're kicking themselves right now is they go up 3-1. It really could have been 4-1 with the penalty shot chance for, of all guys, Callahan, right? Like, there's no other guy you'd rather have taken that shot. And maybe 9 times out of 10 he scores, but it could have been 4-1. But then the name of this...
That could have been a backbreaker. You go 3, then you're like...
Well, all right, because then the name of this episode, in terms of what the first round was, has to just be momentum swing. Or swings, plural, because that's all it was the entire week, right? Because how the Railers can then say, we're down 3-1, we just gave up 3 goals on the major power play, we're going to now go do our best Philadelphia Little Flyers impression and just score in buckets immediately to take back the lead. I was like, I don't know what was said on that bench at that moment, but that was impressive.
Hey, that looks like we picked the right coach of the year, Sean Bertoni. Good little speech there, coach. Well done. You got the job done.
I mean, it was like instant. The power play ended, and then it was like 3-2, 3-3, 4-3. And I was like, that was kind of fast. Like,
I mean, that's another team, too. We've talked about all year long. You got Damon Dulac, you got Ben McGlashan, you got Tyler Anastasi, Tyler Drummond on the back end, Pimentel. And they're another team that's just loaded with good forwards, good defense, good goaltending, and they were able to find the answer. And
the first 3 names you just said are still uncommitted, and they have options to choose from, right? Which is just, it makes this whole thing that much more impressive, as we're at 106, 105 right now. And those 3 guys have options too, right? And they're
free agents.
Good players.
I'm knocking. I know a couple of coaches were texting me, still looking for some people. Go head over to the Worcester Ice Center.
So the Railers move on to face the Chiefs, and I'll admit, I am surprised because I was convinced that Bella was going to put on a show, and they shut him down. That was the big thing that they had to do, was they had to just shut down Colin Bella, because he is their driving force, right? And you got to give the Chiefs credit, because it felt like heading into the playoffs, they were kind of going like backwards for a second, and then they would turn things around and then kind of backwards again. And then to come out and just take care of business, it sets up what should be a tremendous series with a ticket to the finals on the line.
And kind of a dominating fashion too, that the Chiefs did it, going up 3-0 in the first game.
Yep.
You have that 1 goal to Tavares, and then 2 more goals in the third period to put them away. But yeah, dominating series win for Coach Heff and the Connecticut Chiefs. And then the 4-2 win at the in the second game, and that was it. No game 3 needed, but yeah, that was impressive.
The biggest thing that I see with this division finals that I think is going to be fascinating is, and I know, Anthony, we're going to get to Little Flyers and 87s, the war that is about to come down south. But whoever loses that game, 87s or Little Flyers, they already know no matter what happens, they're hosting the following week, because the 87s and Little Flyers both have a better record in the regular season than the Railers and the Chiefs. So if you're the Railers or the Chiefs, you're almost going, in poker terms, all in on your central finals, right? You can still go down and win that 1 game, but man, like, to go have to do that on the road when you have this right in front of you, like, you're putting all your eggs in this basket.
Don't want to put any bad juju on any of these series, but we've talked a little bit about it. Who loses the Central? If it is Railers 87s or Chiefs 87s, then look at the East and North. What if the Rangers lose? The Avalanche lose? Can we possibly have a Rangers Avalanche game?
Man.
One game to go to the frozen finals?
In the wild card game? Oh man.
I know when I say, when I call something World War III, it's really in bad context right now with what's taking place in the world. Like, we'll call it World War IV then, between the Avs and Rangers for a wild card game, because that's what it would be. Like, that would be an unreal matchup with a ticket to the finals on the line. Right? It would be. And from a league perspective, it's kind of a dream scenario.
Yeah, it's like baseball did with the 1 game playoffs, you know.
But what
along the line.
from the league perspective, that when you want to see new teams,
right? Do you want to see the Express?
Nothing could top Avs versus Rangers in the wild card game.
No.
Will that happen?
One officially goes home.
Like
one,
no matter what happens, one goes home. They would appeal and they would say we both get to go. Like screw you, Neil.
I don't know, Neil. I feel like it would be more like when the NHL fans are always complaining about the current playoff format, where you have the best teams facing off in the first or second round, and they're thinking, why are they facing off now? They should be facing off later.
100%.
And I know if that were the case, that's what we'd be hearing from the likes of Chris Torello, Rich DiCaprio. They would not be happy with the format, that's for sure.
I will promise you this, though. If they do both win their respective series, and they're both done by the 20th, 21st or so, and then they're obviously off until the first day of the finals, they'll post one of those really weird, like, we practice scrimmage together pictures in the following week, like they do every year. And it will make kind of like no sense, because it's like, you guys hate each other, but you put on this face that you're best friends, right?
Yeah,
I can't be wrong. Couple. I can't be wrong with this. So, but
they love each other, they respect each other, but they hate each other.
Well, you ever watch those episodes of Tom and Jerry where sometimes they're just hanging out like they're best buds, and then they start, throwing the frying pans at each other? It's just like that.
Yes.
That's the Avalanche and the Junior Rangers.
And we go south. We go south next. And of the 8 series that we had, 3 of them went to game 3. 5 were 2-game sweeps. Jeff, you know what killed me? We were so close to 4-4, perfect symmetry. But regardless, the division that had no game 3 was the biggest surprise to us. How is there no game 3 down south? But
that was a 1-1 game at one point in game 1, right?
Yes, like
that 7-1. I was like, I literally turned back.
I mean, that lasted all for a couple of minutes, Jeff.
Holy heck! Like that was like, oh, all right, good game. Oh, 7-1.
I gotta say, Anthony, your first Devlin O'Kane goal call of game 1 was probably the most excited I've heard you for a goal call all season. When they initially tied the game. But it's unique because I said this to you before. Are we on a crash course for the Little Flyers 87s? And they proved that to be the case.
Yeah. I don't know. I think what I saw from ProTech in Maryland was that they gave it all in the regular season. And by the time it came to the playoffs, they were just gassed.
Yeah.
And I think the 87s and Little Flyers both had more depth. And that's really what drove them. Chris Russo pointed this out. I think in game 1, the second and third lines, so pretty much everyone except for Robbie Seawagon, Matt Anastasio, and Jason Atkinson had a combined 13 points in that 7-1 win. And up until that 7th and final goal, that top line was held off the score sheet, where the 87s have, similar to last year, where they have a top 6, you could even consider it a top 9.
Yep.
Where you have 3 lines that can score at will, and the 4th line may not put up that many points, but still keep the play in the offensive zone. Same thing with the Little Flyers. They can roll 4 lines, and they can score at any given moment. And I think for Team Maryland and the Ducks, it was just too much to handle.
And now they get each other. As we mentioned before, whoever loses knows they're hosting that one game. But it's almost a battle over the extra days of rest at this point, right? I don't want to make it sound like we're penciling 2 South teams in automatically to the finals, but the way that those 2 teams are playing right now, they are the favorites, right? If you had to iron out 6 favorites, it would always include 87s and Little Flyers.
Yeah, you put them in a simulator, play 10 games, and see what
it would always include them there. The question now is for that actual 3-game series, how does it not go 3 games? Right? It has to go 3 games. It just has to.
I think so. I mean, the way the 87s just blew through ProTech like that, and I mean, it was 1-1 after 1, and then destroying and blowing doors after that, and then game 2 was nothing after the first, and then 4 goals in the second, 4 goals in the third. But yeah, Philadelphia, that has to go 3. If it doesn't, then what is going on?
Yeah.
Also, it was weird seeing an EHL game again in Flemington, and EHL is in like not EHLP, because I've seen so many games on hockey TV between the 87s and Renegades.
Yep.
I was kind of hoping that Devlin O'Kane was going to pick up the hat trick, because then I could have said that was the first hat trick for an 87s player at Flemington Ice Arena since Jake LaRusso when he played that one EHLP game before going to the Titans, wearing Simon Fitzgerald's jersey.
Okay, I didn't hear that part. But we need to timestamp that one, because Jake LaRusso, of course, for those who don't know, is Adam Hooley's stepson. And the Renegades were actually winning that game. I think it was a natural hat trick, Anthony. I could be wrong. I think it was a natural hat trick in the third period, which at some point in that game, he was like, you know what? I'm going to go win this
scored,
thing.
He did score 1 goal in the second period. That was actually off a penalty shot. And then he scored 2 in the second period. In the third period.
Like epic. I actually remember that game. That was wild. But we have 4 what should be awesome division finals. You got the Avalanche and the Wolves, the Rangers and the Express, the Chiefs and the Railers, and the 87s and the Little Flyers. And as we mentioned, there is still the chance to lose your division finals and then win the wild card game and go. But as we'll see as this thing progresses, there's a huge benefit in winning your way there, because if you win your way there and you're the 1 seed in your respective pool, because we have 2 pools of 3, if you're the 1 seed, you're playing on Wednesday, Thursday, off Friday, potentially Saturday, Sunday. If you're a 2 seed, you go Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you're one of these wild card teams that goes to the finals, of course, you're playing another game next week, and then you would have to go 4 in a row in Providence. So the whole thing will get proven wrong when we have a team that wins the wild card and then wins the whole freaking thing, right? All right. But I do, in this moment, like our format. Let that be known.
Yeah. And like we talked about too, it just depends on what kind of hockey team you are. Some teams like playing that much in a row. Some teams thrive off that. Some teams don't. I think, again, if we do the simulator, it's, especially this season with how heavy and fast a lot of these teams are, like, it's going to wear on you. And it could be the difference coming down to Schneider Arena in the Frozen Finals. Could be a squeaker that could be a little tired from playing in that wild card game, or not. 100%. Maybe you still have energy. So I don't know. We'll see.
And it's not just EHL in Providence. As Anthony knows, he'll be the one calling all the EHLP games. So let's get over to the EHLP now, because I will say this also, as fast as it felt like the EHL first round came and went, there was a part of me that was kind of like, is the EHLP regular season still going? Like, it kind of dragged on a little bit, but now the table is set in the EHLP as well. So let's start with our power rankings, just like we did for the EHL, the final 4 going into the postseason. And I think that you have to start at number 1 with the Avalanche being the regular season champions. They have to be the number 1 ranked team going in. I will say this, got to give Vinny Calgieri credit. The trophy's still right here, and he doesn't want it.
Nope.
So he basically said, I don't even want to even see it, because last year we got it and then we got knocked out in the playoffs. Like, that's not the trophy that we're going for. We're actually going for the one behind that one, Neil. And the Avalanche, for as much success as they've had in the EHL playoffs in their history, the Avalanche EHLP teams never made it to the Frozen Finals.
Yeah, I was going to say, Vinny Calgieri was at the Frozen Finals last year, but as an assistant of the EHL, not the EHLP. And he brought that up quite a bit to us down in Westchester, didn't he, Neil? About how bitter he was that they were not going to be. Everybody said, you watch, we'll reload. We'll be back there next year. And yeah, well done, Vinny. 66 points, finished with single digit 36-6. That's a heck of a record to finish with. And played some really good hockey at the end of the year, going 7-3 down the stretch. So they're going to be a heck of a team to watch.
Don't forget one of your Yevs with Nick Vasilyev.
Nick Vasilyev. They got
Also,
Baker Egner. They got a lot of guys on that team.
Another thing about the Avalanche that impresses me, Nick Maringola, Jared Packman, when you look at their minutes played, they're only separated by 6 minutes. Marangola's played 947, Jared Packman with 941. Maringola had 13 wins, Packman with 12. So these are two goaltenders that, split right down the middle. Caligiuri can put either one of them in goal, and you know that they have a shot to win. So I think when you have that kind of lineup, all throughout, it not only makes them the regular season champions, but the clear favorites for the EHLP.
Another hot topic that's been debated a lot over the last bunch of years is because you're seeing these tandems in college. I'm starting to see more workhorses, but the pros a lot more. You're starting to see a lot more 1A, 1Bs. So who does he go with in game one? And then after game one, do you stay with that goalie? Do you go back? And
it's going to be interesting. And when I do see these guys this week, the Wolves and the Avs, because they're obviously the closest to me, I'll probably make it to a few of those games. I'm going to hug everyone because the way that they scheduled it makes me happy. On Thursday, it's EHLP, then EHL. On Friday, it's EHLP, then EHL. On Sunday, it's EHLP, and then EHL. Like back-to-back. Perfect. Wolves, Avs. Like it's just
hug.
It's just perfect. Like that's how it should be. That's just how it should be. Like back-to-back games. Maybe it's both Wolves. Maybe it's both Avs. Maybe it's a split of some sort. But it's perfect that way. But then for the other matchup in the North Division, that one's really interesting because at points during this year, the Lumberjacks were in the top 4 and the Warriors were in the top 4, right? I totally just realized that I just skipped the power rankings, by the way, guys. I totally just skipped the power rankings. So pause that for a second.
The season dragged on, so power rankings
pause that for a second because I figured that you would like where I was going with this. We said 1 was the Avs. 2, 3 to me feels very simple. You go Railers with a 1 or the first seed, I should say, in the East Division, and the Rangers are the 2. They were really the next 2 best teams throughout the year. So the Railers are 2, Rangers are 3, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Okay,
who gets the 4th and final spot though?
Little Flyers as the South Division champs.
All right,
Little Flyers, Lumberjacks maybe because.
Well, that's a great transition because if we go Little Flyers, that's kind of where I was going next. Was the Lumberjacks and Warriors and Little Flyers have kind of been fighting for that 4th spot all year long, right? Like, which one of those teams is going to push the teams above them, the top 3 the hardest on this road to Providence? It's interesting.
Yeah.
Also, can I just give a shout out to the Philadelphia Little Flyers? Their last game of the season playing against the 87s, they dressed up Ronan Marley as a forward.
Wow.
So before the game, and I switched with Chris Rusto. He did the play-by-play for that game. I was doing ringside, and I was talking to the players, and Ronan came up to me. He's like, "I'm playing out today." I'm like, "No, you're not." And all the players are like, "Yeah, he is." So I go to Mark Catron, the coach of the Little Flyers, and I go, "Mark, you got to just dispel this for me. They're telling me that Ronan's playing out today." He's like, "Oh no, he is." I'm like, "What?"
For those of you that don't know, Ronan Marley is a goaltender.
I guess
per usual.
But goalies are quietly at times good skaters.
Neil, he nearly scored a goal.
Okay.
A defenseman for the Little Flyers took a shot from the point. He went to the far post. It was a wrist shot that was about waist high, and he got a piece of it with his stick. And instead of going in towards the net, it just deflected wide into the corner. And I saw the bench, and they all gasped. They're like, "Oh my goodness, he nearly scored."
Yeah.
He didn't use his goalie paddle, right, Anthony? He was using his using a regular stick out there.
The funny thing about him, though, and I pointed this out on the broadcast, he stopped. He would always stop with one skate because he would do goalie stops as a skater.
Yeah.
It looked a little weird, but other than that, like he played a pretty solid game. I was very impressed.
I'll give it to him then. But with that, I do think Vermont and Valley had these really weird ends of the season because there were so many games for them that didn't really mean much. That I do want to go Little Flyers at 4, just because they were that last division champion. So just to recap, we would have Avs 1, Railers 2, Rangers 3, Little Flyers 4 going in, which then shifts us back up to the north. And Vermont's hosting all 3 games in that series with Valley. Are we on a crash course now? I mean, is that same terminology? The Avalanche should be the favorites against the Wolves based off the regular season, and then it's Valley and the Lumberjacks is battling for a chance at the Avs. Is that really what we're in store for?
Seems like it. And then Letty Arena, we talked about home ice, another tough place to play. People said that Merrill Fay are kind of the toughest place to play. So yeah, seems like it.
It's interesting, right? Because you know who the biggest fans of the Avalanche are right now? The Rangers and Railers. Because as long as the Avalanche are in the position that the New Jersey 87s EHL team was in last year, where they are the regular season champions. They're going to go to Providence regardless of what happens, as long as they make it to the second round. So if they make it to the second round and they still win there, or if they lose there, it gets kind of interesting then because they're still going, right? So they would go with Valley or with Vermont at that point. But when you go shift to the East, we've talked all year long about Railers and Rangers back and forth. The Rangers are in first and the Railers are in first. And really,
Seahawks too.
I was just going there. I don't want to put those guys in the East Division Finals just yet, because I think the Seahawks and the Express each have the firepower to knock either one of those guys off. But if we do get to a point where it's Avalanche versus fill-in Team X, and then Railers versus Rangers, the Railers and Rangers are going to be watching the scoreboard the entire time saying, Avs, can you just win this so that we know that we're both going? It's really what it comes down to. So that's what's going to make this really interesting, because then you go down south too. And when I talked about the Central and the East earlier, the South is focused on just the South, because when you look around the rest of the divisions, unless there's pure chaos, which we know that can happen in March, the South is sending one team to the EHLP finals, and that's the winner of the division. And right now, I don't know who that's going to be. It's tough to say.
Now, Neil, me being the 87's homer, I have to point out that the 87's P team has really turned it on since the flip of the calendar year. 9-2-1 in the year of 2022.
Phenomenal.
Even by EHLP standards, they're a young team, but they have really hit their stride. They've had a couple of wins against the Little Flyers. They've actually won the season series. They smashed the Chiefs the last time that they had played, and they get home ice advantage. Shout out to Worcester, winning that final game against them.
Yes. And the Chiefs at one point though were a first place team in that division, right? And I know what people are going to say when I'm going with this, but you look down the stretch for the Renegades, they won 4 games down the stretch also. Like it's the South of the P. I don't think we've talked about it enough. If we see some weird things happen down there this upcoming weekend, I would not be surprised by any means.
Also, my favorite thing about the South, and you don't want to count out the Chiefs or the Renegades, but there is a good chance that both in the EHL and EHLP, the South Division final can be the 87s and Little Flyers.
Yep. And I know in talking to Mark Catron, the nightmare that he still has is the last time that we were in Providence. This is March of 2019. The Little Flyers EHLP loses the championship game to the Wolves.
Yes.
And then the EHL team loses the championship game to the Avalanche. The last time,
double bonus that you do not want.
The last time we were in Providence, and like it's I forget who he called it something. I called it like a doomsday something, because in that same year the 87s lost and were eliminated both on the same day also, EHL and EHLP.
I remember being on the call for both of those games.
Wilkes-Barre in the EHL, and I think it was actually the Little Flyers in the EHLP. And Hooley referred to his Doomsday Sunday as being slightly better than Catron's Doomsday Sunday because his came like early on in the playoffs and Catron's was Championship Sunday. And I was like, fair way to look at it. He's like, that's a nightmare. Mine's like half a nightmare. Something like that. So
Neil, I still remember that glove save by Walker on Zach Tarantino.
Yep.
Thomas Walker.
That was
Thomas Walker made more saves in Frozen Finals.
You unlocked a bad memory, Neil.
I'm sorry.
We love Thomas Walker.
Yes. But that tells you where you're at right now, heading into the second round in the EHL, in the first round in the EHLP. And of course, there were brackets involved in this. So let's get to fantasy and talk about our brackets so far.
It's time for the Ecru Fantasy Challenge.
And the Ecru Fantasy Challenge is presented by BioSteel, the sports drink of the EHL. Use the promo code ESHOW, that's ESHOW, for 25% off when you check out at biosteel.com.
All right, so we'll start with the brackets, and I have to start by recognizing Justin's bracket is technically the best of all of our brackets. So everyone knows. So he's got producer's criteria. He's got 48 points to the rest of us that aren't even in the 40s. So damn. it's another year gone by and nobody's perfect. Which, if we ever have a perfect bracket, I am gonna make it a rule that whoever gets that perfect bracket automatically wins the whole thing. It has to be, because it's so hard to get a perfect bracket. You have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge that. But in terms of what we did this past week, it's funny how Lauren's fantasy works. And Lauren is on assignment today for hockey night with some high school stuff. So that's why she's not here right now. But for Lauren's fantasy, she either has the best week of all of us or the worst week. There's no in between.
Never second or third, first or last. You ain't first or last.
So she either picks first or last each week. It really is that simple. So
a poster of Ricky Bobby in her room.
When you look at her points from this past week, in terms of her 4 players who weren't bad picks, she got 5 points, a goal and an assist. That's it.
Yep.
So then she got 34 points for her bracket, which made her pick first this week. She started with Drew Oliveri up front, who's currently tied for the league lead in postseason points with 9. Matt Herrick on defense for the 87s. I'm going to skip a guy for a second, come back to Henson, and then Adam Bove, utility, and then go to Henson now, because I got to give Lauren credit here. She's had such trouble with the goaltending position that she said, I'm going to go with the goalie that I know is going to start. Like there's no doubt Henson's going to start. So she's going to get points, right? She can't even
I picked him round 1.
like her picking Jeremy Connor wasn't a bad pick because he's the age out compared to Haynes, and like he's been there. He's probably going to start. And then Julio was like, well, we just kind of won game 1 in convincing fashion. We'll go back to Haynes again in game 2. Like, watch the 87s just use Connor the whole Little Flyers series, and the whole thing kind of makes no sense. But that's her lineup for this upcoming week. And then to give ourselves credit, the 3 of us, we all had better weeks than that, I will say. But still not enough to catch Lauren, who has just jumped so far ahead of us. But
I'm getting closer.
Yes, you are getting closer. So to go to Anthony's bracket, or his picks first, Colin Bella, as I mentioned earlier, I got him a goal on the power play for 4 points. James Metler, a pair of assists. Nathan Miller, a pair of shutouts. And then Charles Lavoie with 2 goals, 1 on the power play. You combine that with his bracket points, that's 70.8 for Anthony. And Anthony, it's like chalk for you this week. You used 2 of the same guys.
Yep. Going back to Aiden Hotchkiss, 7 points in 2 games. That was just ridiculous. Big reason why he had 61 points in 45 games in the regular season. And I have to go some of the 87s on defense. I'm going with Jimmy Metler. He had 2 points in that series against the Ducks. For goaltenders, I mean, who else? Nathan Miller. Just past Brendan Brawley, by the way, for all-time wins in the Eastern Hockey League. Yes, if you include both regular season and playoffs. So big congratulations to him. Also getting some separation with the shutouts, both wins being shutouts for him in round number 1. And then Devlin O'Kane. He has been lights out, especially in the playoffs. He was great in the home stretch of the regular season, and he's kept that going in the playoffs. 4 goals, 2 assists in 6 games. Like I said, nearly picked up the hat trick in Flemington, but he is the obvious pick for my utility spot.
And Jeff, you picked next, even though my initial calculations had me picking next, but because everyone knows I cheat, and I added 2.4 points to myf.
And it doesn't look good when you do the late ads there, Neil.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
I love you, buddy.
Add a late 2.4 points for myself, still significantly in 4th place. Never last place, 4th place.
Just enough to squeak.
but Jeff,
you want to pick last? You can pick last.
Jeff had the next highest total, 4 assists for Colin Callanan, nothing from Ryan Bro. Joseph Henson, a pair of wins, 2 goals, 4 assists, and 1 power play point for Matt Carlson. Plus your 37 bracket points gave you 77.8. Who do you have in the second round?
All right, let's try to stay in an order this week, shall we? I'm going to do it.
Yes, please.
It's a playoff week. So we go forward first. Thank you, Anthony. I will take Matthew Zdanowicz for 500, please. 7 points in 2 games for him. 2 goals, 5 assists. He was all over the place in that Pro Tech series. So hoping for some more of the same from Matthew Zdanowicz. On defense, had kind of a quiet first round, but a guy that we all picked a lot during the regular season, Tyler Anastasi, finished with 30 points in 41 games. The regular season had 2 points in that series against the Apple Corps. Both were helpers. So hoping he can get back up to what he was doing in the regular season and be a big power play contributor in that series against the Chiefs. And then I'm hoping to get a little Jack Lee magic because nobody's picked this kid yet, but he was a pretty big monster up in Laconia for the second half of the season. Alex Leracy, 17 points in 15 games. Very symmetrical too, Neil, almost symmetrical. 9 goals, 8 assists. Likes to score, likes to distribute. He had a goal and 5 assists, 6 points in that first series against Vermont. So hoping for Leracy to stay hot. And then speaking of staying hot in Laconia, why not? Liam Kilgallen against the New Hampshire Avalanche. You know the Avalanche are going to get a lot of shots on Kilgallen. He only played in 1 out of those 6 matchups in the regular season against the Avalanche, and he got the win. Gave up 4 goals, but to get the win. So we're going to see what Kilgallen has in his goaltending attire and see. We'll see if he stays. Hopefully, he stays in the net. Do not come out of the crease and participate in anything like Rooney Marley, and stay in that blue paint and get me some W's, Liam. And that's it.
That gets to me. And for the second straight year, I start to perform my best in the postseason of fantasy. Contrary to last year, I was catching up to Brittany and taking over for the lead. This year, I don't know if I can do that this year. I would need something pretty significant to happen here in the second round. But for my picks this week, since Jeff is going back on track in order, I'm not going to. I'm going to go from my forward and my utility first. I need the Railers. So I have to get like 100 points this week, right, in order to win, like truthfully. So Saves. I need the Railers and Chiefs series to become almost like a home run derby in hockey between Jack Devine and Damon Dulac. If you could both just score 12 goals each, we're in business, right? Perfect. Great. So now that's my forward and my utility. My defenseman and my goalie totally contradicts everything that I say to everyone all year long. It makes me look like an idiot because they're going against each other.
Yeah, I thought about that earlier.
But as I said in the group me, I have reasoning. The reasoning is Victor Malzahn will put up points, but they're also going to put up so many shots on Jack Boschert that it's all going to wash itself out. Boschert,
that's where I thought you were going.
All we need this week, he had 141 saves in the first round. We're going for 280 this week. If that happens, I could win this whole thing. We're in business, right?
Jack will be on an IV in a hospital if that happens.
So that's my lineup. To recap where we're at, for the full season. Actually, let's do bracket first. I mentioned Justin has the best bracket at 48 points, right? That's pretty damn good compared to us. So
good for the brand.
Yes. Jeff, you're at 37. Anthony and Lauren are each at 34, and I'm at 33. Overall standings, Lauren is at 809.4, Jeff is at 792.4, Anthony's at 776, and I'm at 755.4. So as you can see, like my chances are really not that high. But Jeff, you are closing that gap on Lauren at the top. So for fantasy, we have this second round, and where it makes things really interesting is we're going to have one more round after this, and that will feature just the 2 wildcard games. So in a way, the picking order could be very important going into those wildcard games.
Assuming we want to lose this week?
I don't know. You know,
I'm gonna go back. Never mind. Let me change. Just
like
kidding.
it's really interesting
Graphics
because we're gonna have each of us is gonna have a lineup for those 2 wildcard games, and ideally, there's only 4 goalies and 4 of us. So if you pick last, you have the last guy remaining. Left. So it's going to be very interesting, but that will take us now into what to watch for.
Before we wrap things up, here's what to watch for this week in the eShow.
What to watch for is presented by Hockey TV, the official streaming platform for your EHL and EHLP action through the 2021-2022 season.
So let's just go around the horn fast and each pick a series per division, EHL and EHLP, that we are most looking forward to. And contrary to what I've done in the past, you guys pick first so I don't steal what you'd want to pick.
Anthony, would you like to go first or would you like me to go first?
I have his EHL. We know his EHL. It's 87s and low flash. But it's a legit series, so you can say why, Anthony.
Yeah, you have the Flyers who've been so great offensively the entire season, and the 87 scoring 15 goals in 2 games against Pro Tech. It's going to be a battle of the offense. And also, be fair to Joseph Henson as well as Owen Haynes. Goaltending and defense have also been pretty good for both teams. So, I mean, these are just 2 stacked teams going up against each other. It's going to be a battle. Tom Wilms will have the call on Wednesday. I'll have the call on Friday for at least games 1 and 2. I'm sure Tom wouldn't mind getting another game for a deciding game 3 on Monday.
EHLP series to watch?
I mean, I'd say 87s and Chiefs because Chris and I get to be on the call for at least 2 of those games and also a third one if necessary. Again, shout out to the Railers for helping them get home. But another matchup to watch out for the EHLP, I'd have to say the Lumberjacks and Warriors. Mm-hmm. The Lumberjacks both teams have been really terrific this season, and they've given the Avalanche some fits throughout the regular season. I think that should either one of them move on, and if they have to go up against the Avalanche, it could be a really good series.
Mm-hmm. All right, Jeff, you're next.
I kind of want to go Avalanche Wolves in both, but I feel like I have like a 1A, 1B with the EHL, Avalanche Wolves and Rangers Express, because Rangers Express, every time they play, it's usually a 1-goal game. It's usually low scoring, which makes sense this year too, with Boschert and Miller going hand for hand, and both offenses are a little sparse when it comes to scoring goals, and they have that playoff feel to them. But then Avalanche Wolves, because the Wolves have been the biggest team, like the 87s in the Premier, with their storming back up the standings in the second half. That's what the Wolves did in the EHL in their second half. And can they push the Avalanche a little bit? We saw some scary play, not in the playoff series for the Avs, but at the end of the season. Yep. Wolves won 5-4 in that final matchup against the Avs. So can they pull off some magic? The last time we were in the Frozen Finals, Neil, remind me, your boy Jack Johansson, New England Wolves.
Wow. Yeah, that was that championship game. Yeah.
That was that championship.
Yeah.
Before he went to the Wizards after that. But
EHLP.
So maybe the EHLP Wolves come back to Schneider. They like it there. I don't know. So yeah. I think those are 3 good series. I give you a little bonus there to kind of watch out for.
All right, so I'm going to go with Railers Chiefs. No, sorry, Dulac versus Divine. That's what I'm going with first in the EHL.
D&D.
That's the one that I need to explode. I just think that's set up to be a 3-game awesome. Everyone all in on winning that Central Division Finals. And then for the EHLP, I really have my eye on the Rangers versus the Seahawks, because the Rangers, it was interesting with the Railers. It kind of came down to really just that last matchup. And if the Rangers hadn't gone to overtime in that game, it may be a different series right now. Last time these two teams faced off, the Seahawks won. Seahawks maybe trying to get some revenge for the EHL series. Rangers trying to make it double up, if you will, win both the EHL and the EHLP. So I'm looking at that series. So that will do it for this week's episode. Lauren will be back on with us next week to preview what will be at that point the wild card games. But for this week, we're focused first on the second round in the EHL and the first round in the EHLP. I'm sure it will fly by just as fast as week one did and hopefully be just as chaotic. So enjoy it, guys.
Yeah, good luck out there, Jets.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.